The wager is going to be all my kids get tuition paid for to IMG. I think that's
I'm feeling confident.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on You Think, presented by Audiorama and our friends at Body Armor. Busy weekend, coming off week one of the NFL season. Called my first game, flew out to Minneapolis for the Vikings-Packers, America's Game of the Week with Fox this past Sunday. I knew going into the game that Minnesota on paper was pretty good. You know, when you look at the guys they added, the guys they have coming back, they were pretty good. Anytime a new staff comes in, new coaches, of course, Kevin O'Connell's the new coach there, comes from the Rams. You're always, a little hesitant, like how long is the new system going to take before it kind of catches on? Well, I'll tell you what, they came out of the gates flying. At one point, they were up 20-0. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers were struggling all day, both offensively and defensively. So I came away really impressed with Minnesota. It's a really cool place to go to a game. The stadium's beautiful. The fans are really into it. It is crazy loud. I had to have them turn down the crowd noise. They can turn that down in my headset because it was so hard. I almost couldn't hear my own voice because the crowd noise is pretty significant there inside that new stadium. So fun weekend. And the youth sports front, my wife she took my boys down to Myrtle Beach. My oldest had a baseball tournament that they only got a couple games in, and then it was rained out. So they spent more time sitting at the fields, waiting out weather delays. They never ended up actually finishing the tournament, so that was a bummer. So they spent the whole weekend at the beach. My daughter's soccer game she stayed home for was canceled. So we had a weather weekend of youth sports in the Olsen house. So we didn't get a whole lot accomplished this weekend, but the kids got a little bit of a break, so that's never a bad thing. Back to football this weekend. We had a bye, so we got a football game this weekend. My youngest son has a baseball tournament. My daughter has soccer, so we are in the full-fledged fall season of youth sports. Today we got a really cool guest. One of the places that we really wanted to explore when we were laying out this map of You Think and all these different aspects of the youth sports experience was the IMG Academy down in Bradenton, Florida. I first was exposed to the IMG Academy years back. The DNC convention was here in Charlotte. They took over our stadium, so we got relocated the week that we were going to go play the Tampa Bay Bucks. Week one, I want to say it was like 2014, give or take. And so we went down there and we spent the whole week at IMG Academy. It was my first time ever seeing it. And just since then, it has just blown up. The camps, the academy, the teams. It seems like every player that goes there is going on scholar. It was a really cool insight. Tim Pernetti, former college football player, actually played high school football up in my neck of the woods in New Jersey. We talk a little bit about that. He was the athletic director at Rutgers. He's now the COO of IMG Academy down in Bradenton. So really interesting talking about elite youth sports, the boarding component of, sending away your high school or middle school child to go live, outside of your home and kind of have a college type experience. So it was really cool to just hear his insight, hear how they're continuing to grow and why they think they're able to separate themselves and offer an experience that just frankly other schools in our country can't match. So really cool, interesting conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you, as always, our sponsor, Body Armor. Body Armor not only fuels this show, but fuels all of my sports teams here in the local Charlotte area. There's a lot of choices for sideline drinks. My favorite, my kids' favorite, our fridges are stocked at all times with orange mango, strawberry banana. I don't know, just that's what our kids gravitate towards. We go to a gas station. Hey, can you get me Body Armor? We go to the supermarket. Hey, Mom, can you make sure we get Body Armor? They've just always gravitated towards it. And we appreciate them joining us here on You Think these last couple weeks as our show sponsor. Body Armor is made with coconut water, B vitamins, no artificial sweeteners. For more information, you can go to drinkbodyarmor.com. So now please enjoy this conversation with the COO of IMG Academy, Tim Pernetti. But before we do, Tim, today we kick off. We are starting this for anyone who lives in New Jersey. When we're having this conversation, it's Ramapo Wayne Hills week.
Big week.
So let's, before we get into IMG and how we get kids scholarships and all that nonsense, let's just go back a little bit. So for all of our New Jersey fans here on You Think, my dad was the high school coach at Wayne Hills High School, where all my brothers and I went. and our arch rival nemesis in the universe was Ramapo High School. Chris Sims, the Tolls, the whole crew. Well, Tim, you went to Ramapo, and so like, what does the Ramapo Wayne Hills rivalry mean? Like, still to this day, it's the first thing you said to me. Hey, this is Ramapo Wayne Hills week.
It obviously still means a lot, So first of all, Greg, it's great to see you and be back with you. And after seeing you as a high school player and watching your career and seeing what you're doing now with this, like, my hat's off to you, and I wish you success with it. But thanks for having me. At Ramapo, look, this was always known as, we just used to coin it as Hills Week. And from the end of the game the prior week, all we would talk about was Wayne Hills. And the unfortunate part, when you're a high school kid, and you probably remember, it got us into this frenzy about the game. But I remember every snap of the Wayne Hills game my senior year, when, sorry to remind you, but we beat you guys on a last second field goal. This was probably when you were like 5 years old.
Yeah, I was like 4, so it's fine.
Yeah. Your dad gripped my hand a little extra hard during the handshake line that day.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah, but it's Wayne Hills Ramapo. It's funny. Indian Hills, which was our sister school, was the Thanksgiving Day game. But Wayne Hills Ramapo has just sustained the test of time through all of this realignment in New Jersey to still maintain its status as one of the most bitter and competitive rivalries. So, if you want to talk when we're off the air about what our wager is going to be on this game, I'm ready to do it.
Fair. The wager is going to be all my kids get tuition paid for to IMG. I'm
feeling confident. I saw Ramapo beat up on Willingboro last week.
Yeah, I don't know how good Hills is this year. I'll be honest with you. I would be making a bet without much information. Well, all fun aside, that is a huge rivalry for any of our New Jersey people watching this. They'll know exactly. For the rest of you non-Jersey people, I'm sure what we're talking about means nothing. But Tim, let's get into why we're here today. The IMG Academy, just for some background, Tim, you've been, an athletic director at Rutgers, obviously an all-state player. We just talked about at Ramapo. You've been in the sports landscape your entire life, your entire now career. For people who might not know, just give us an idea of what is IMG Academy. My first time coming down, we practiced at your facility. We were getting ready to play Tampa, and the DNC convention was in Charlotte, and they took over the stadium. So we got displaced for an entire week, and we came down to Bradenton and used your facility. And I remember hearing about IMG, but then seeing it changed my entire perception. So for those who don't know, give us an idea of what IMG Academy is and kind of what its values are, what it stands for, and then we can dive into how this relates to, young high school and, even earlier athletes.
Sure. I think what you said is honestly what we hear from 100% of the people that say, I knew about IMG Academy, but then when I went there, I was like, I couldn't believe what it was. So there's this perception of what it is. And then people that, I always say the same thing, got to see it with your own eyes. It's kind of a different place. But then the battle too, which we can talk about, is what people continue to perceive it as, which is just a school that's about, it's about sports, and that's really all it's about. So the IMG Academy, going back, IMG came in and purchased this tennis academy from the legendary Nick Bollettieri. And Bollettieri had established a place where kids could live and train. There was no school, there was no educational component, but he built a mecca for tennis that was globally known. And when IMG came in, they doubled down on that strategy, and it became a group of sports academies. There was still no school. And as part of the process, IMG became a training center for a lot of pro athletes that were getting combine ready or draft ready. And then a lot of athletes that lived in the Florida area or relocated here to get elite level training. And, over time, what it's become is it's a 600-acre campus now. We are in the midst of $100 million in capital expansion because of the growth we've had here. We actually thrived and grew during COVID, unlike everybody else. But it is a holistic educational institution. And the way I would look at it is sports and school are twins. Nothing is more important than the other. They operate on a high level competitive plane with balance. So if you came here, given your experience in college, Greg, you would say this is a lot like I experienced at college on a smaller scale. The whole idea is to put kids in an environment that is highly structured, highly competitive, and prepare them for college. Because 99.9% of the student athletes that graduate here play sports in college. Not all of them play for 4 years, but it's not a place where the future pros go to train. Like that's less than 2% of the 1,400 kids that go to school here. The other kids are good at sport, trying to get great at sport, and use it as a vehicle to get into a better school. Like that's really the environment in the place. But it is about holistic development. Like there's not just sports and school. There are other difference making factors that this place delivers that nobody else does.
Yeah, what would you say your target audience is? What are the families when you guys sit around and you say, all right, these are the types of kids, these are the types of like, what would you say you guys are out seeking? Like kids from obviously you get kids from all over the world, depending on the
Sure.
sport, but for the main American traditional team sports, obviously most of them are coming from the States. But like, what would you say your target audience that you're looking for and the families that you find are the most attractive to this kind of setup you're describing?
I think the challenging part of finding the right audience is over time as this thing has grown, you're more flexible, on what the scope of the audience is. As it's grown to the point now where we're literally up against demand, up against capacity, you can be more selective, about those things. And the one thing the place has never wavered off of is, what it stands for in a variety of its core values, like having a helpful heart, having a champion spirit, being a contributor to the community and to people around you. But I think the demographic it varies. Like 50% of the population here is international. So, that is a great opportunity for, kids from all over the world and absolutely student athletes in the States to be in a more diverse environment of people that they would not interact with at a public school or maybe even at a private school in other places. But, certainly what we're looking for are student athletes that are highly motivated, that are highly competitive, and are willing to sacrifice a lot of the things that contribute to the happiness of kids along the way. Like I want to have a really comprehensive social experience when I'm in high school. Kids have that here. It's just it's a boarding school environment, so it's highly structured all the time. And as far as parents go, I think you know this from doing this podcast, which I applaud you for doing it. Parents, when it comes to youth sports, and you have your own kids now, and I have mine, I think parents, when it comes to youth sports that have not competed in sports at a high level, at times can be generally unreasonable, sometimes about approach expectations, whatever. So, our job, and it's a hard job, is we manage the conversation and the expectations in the first conversation, not later on in the process. But the academy is, it's well known that it is not a cheap proposition to send a student athlete to IMG Academy, but it is a comprehensive proposition that prepares kids not only for college and college sports, but prepares them for the road ahead in their life, whatever it is that they decide to do.
All right, so you brought it up. So I just want to dive down because I have a million thoughts in my head about how. So to start off, you brought up the cost, right? You brought up the access to it, but you guys are fielding teams, like you said, international groups of student athletes, individual sports, tennis, golf, but then also traditional, American traditional team sports, baseball,
Mhm.
basketball, football, so be it. So when you bring up the cost, I mean, it is a pretty significant cost. I've seen upwards of, $90,000, $80,000. You can correct me if those figures are accurate or not. So how do you guys keep the access to what you guys are offering open to as many people as possible? But then also say, hey, if you want to come kind of have your child live this life and have this structure and have these opportunities to go on, like what is the cost benefit analysis that these families are doing? And then are there opportunities for families who can't just out of pocket shell out that sort of money? Like, how do you guys work with them
Sure.
as you piece these teams together?
It's a great question. The thing that we try to remind people all the time is over a period of time, the cost has increased. But this is a 600-acre campus with 1,400 students. More than half of them live on the campus. And you have a 365, 24/7 campus. You're doing food service. You're doing campus safety. You have staff living in the dorms, managing student life. We have a 24/7 health services group. You have coaches. You have administrators. Like the place, you don't turn it off. And there's a cost to doing that business. You can't turn it off. In addition to all the high level competition and competitive education and training that we do in the school and on the courts or on the fields. So I think in a lot of parents and families that we've talked to, it is a significant investment. In some cases, families make that investment in the now in order for it to
Right.
return on investment in
Totally.
college,
Yep.
right? Like, hey, I'm going to invest a little bit now, but I think based on where, my son or daughter is academically and athletically, I think this may give them the opportunity to earn a scholarship or
Yep.
financial aid in college. So in some cases, maybe it's a pay now, not pay later strategy. But we also try to be open and inclusive to everyone. And we do run this in a lot of ways, Greg. You run it like a university. Like, we do have a financial aid component here. Student athletes that come to IMG Academy that run through the application process have an opportunity to apply for financial aid. And we have qualifications for financial aid. We distribute a significant amount of financial aid. So, a great story on that is when I got here, the one thing I noticed right out of the gate was 3-to-1 boys to girls. And then we started talking to girls about the experience. And we realized very quickly that we needed to put girls' experience in focus. We want to make it a more interesting place for girls to attend boarding school. And we've doubled down on that. And in the process, we are part of a bigger company, right? We're part of Endeavor and WME, a big agency. And we have female leaders in sport that we represent. Danny Garcia, Robin Roberts, Lindsey Vaughn, Michelle Tafoya, Carrie Champion. We pulled them into a group and said, let's figure out how to create a different experience for girls. And you all will help us vet candidates, and we will distribute full scholarships to 6 young girls a year to be part of this Women in Sports Committee IMG Academy Empowerment Program. And we actually have 6 girls on this campus right now in various sports that are part of that scholarship program. And that's a group of girls that could not have afforded the opportunity to be part of what we do. And now they are, and it's going to prepare them for all the things that they have ahead of them. So financial aid is a component, and we're thrilled that we can do that. And I think as we get to more and more demand here, financial aid ends up being a different conversation for people.
Yeah, and I'm curious, is your bucket of financial aid, you mentioned like a university. So much of the university has endowment and booster support and, alumni support. When you guys are operating this in essence like a not even a mini college, but like a legitimate university type setting, is this privately funded? Are you getting public funding? Like, when you guys build this financial aid package, I bring my son or daughter to you, I go through a private application process, or do I go through some sort of like publicly funded application process?
No, it's not. The beauty of this place in a lot of ways, and you mentioned, briefly my former life as an athletic director at a major public school in New Jersey, and I could tell you stories about politics and nonsense
Oh, I'm
that
sure.
goes on in these places. But the beauty of this place is the model was built a long time ago to be a private for-profit model.
Right.
And that's not something that you see common, in this world, in our world. The beauty of what we've built here is, like, the boarding school is one component of the business. And while you have 1,400 kids in the boarding school, and that is an expensive proposition, it's also the most expensive product to deliver. Right. And then you have camps where you have 8 to 10,000 kids every year will go to a camp here. That's an important part. We have teams, groups, and events. Like, your team came here. That's a part of the business. I brought the WNBA here to do their COVID season during the bubble. So there's all these other things. The beauty of all these businesses is it enables us to self-fund the financial aid.
Got it.
So there's no public process. There's no bureaucracy. We do have an application process and a review process for financial aid, but we are self-funding the financial aid, which makes the process more seamless and smoother for us to be able to identify the right candidates and be able to distribute it. And naturally, you have to make tough decisions. Like, some of the financial aid, I think, is done in one way, and others are done a different way, where, like, these girls are having a full financial aid delivered for the experience. So it's there are various versions of it, but being able to run a successful business and self-fund it really gives us tremendous flexibility to be able to reach into the community everywhere students that are interested in this opportunity are.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And again, you talked about how hard it must be at like some of these public schools, and I'm sure you have great stories about your time in Rutgers of trying to get application, administration and financial aid and all that. I can only imagine what a disaster that process is. But to not change gears too much, but along these lines, when you guys are seeking these student athletes, and whether it's international tennis players or golf, or whether it's football players or basketball players and baseball players here in the state, Are you guys actively going out and recruiting them? Do you find now that your brand is kind of so well known across the youth athletic, environment that these athletes who seek this level of competition at a young age are finding you? Like, what does that process look like for you guys to build these truly elite teams? You mentioned like a university, though those coaches are out there, but competing against other universities. You guys don't really have competition. If you want to go play on a truly elite baseball, basketball, football team, you guys are in essence the top of the ladder. So like, what does that recruitment / just kids applying to come to IMG look like?
I think, Greg, a lot of what you're saying about where we stand in the pecking order has to do with the investment that's been made over time by the company to build the brand into the elite brand that it is. I don't know that I totally agree we don't have competition. Like, I think there are other boarding schools out there that offer high level football, baseball, ice hockey, basketball. They're out there. Like, one of our biggest competitors in Florida in basketball is Montverde. I mean, that's a 2-point game every year. They have elite level players. We compete in all these other sports. But as you can imagine, and you remember this experience from your college experience when you were getting recruited out of Wayne Hills, is coaches do a bulk of that work. And at IMG Academy, the way we're set up, unlike a lot of other places, is we don't have a lone athletic director and coaches. We have an athletic director, and then each sport sort of has its version of its own athletic director.
Yep.
And then you have the coaching staff, the administrative staff beneath them. But assistant coaches are doing a bulk of the recruiting. The answer of, like, do you recruit all of them? Does some come to you? It's a mix. When you have thousands of kids that come to camp, 100 of those kids every summer convert into full-time boarding school students.
Wow.
So there's conversion out of camp. There are kids that are legacy. My sister went there. My brother went there. There are relationships, like we have people recruiting in country, in the Far East, in Mexico, in South America. So, we have assets promoting the IMG Academy and building that affinity. So it's a mix, but there is recruiting. The only exception is in Florida, it's not permitted, by state association rules for us to actively recruit. If student athletes in the state of Florida contact us and then go through the application process, that's all above board and that's legit. But there is quite a bit of recruiting that goes on, but it's not exclusively recruiting. A lot of people come to us based on brand and reputation or advocacy from a former teammate or a friend or a brother or a sister. And then we convert quite a few kids out of the camp experience on an annual basis. Like, that's a significant number of kids.
And what age would you say that conversion? I'm fascinated by that. I a couple kids that went to school with my oldest son, he's in 5th grade. A bunch of his buddies came down they actually did 2 weeks. They did a week of football and they did a week of, I want to say, lacrosse maybe. And so they came down and spent 2 weeks and they absolutely loved it. What age do you say traditionally kids enter into your program? Like, is there like a target specific age, or I'm sure it varies amongst the board, but like, is there a specific age where you see the most conversion or the most initial interest in putting their son or daughter into one of your programs?
I'd say it's a little bit of a mix. And the thing about, I didn't mention this earlier when I gave you the overview, is 6th grade through 12th grade at the academy.
Right.
And there's also a postgraduate program in certain sports. So we really are working our tails off to get younger, right? Because you want to have kids for more of the life cycle, as much as you can possibly have. I think the realities of some of it are some families will invest in it sooner to create some structure and then maybe not stay for the extended period of time. I've only met a handful of kids that have been here like 6 years, 5 years. We are starting to see more kids in the 3 and 4 year category, but I think you see more in the 2-year category. What I'd say to you is, like, it's like everything else. The optics of these elite level teams, like we do have a national team in men's and boys and girls basketball. You have one in football. You have one in baseball. But those numbers combined is, you're talking about a couple hundred kids out of the 1,400, and the rest of them are the kids that are looking to use sport as the vehicle to get into a better school. So we see a lot of conversion out of camp. And the average age of the campers that come to, you would think like, oh, these are high school kids. They're not high school kids. The camp kids are like 12-year-old to 14-year-old kids. So we capture a lot of conversion into like the middle school or the freshman year age. And then you see quite a bit of conversion into the junior and senior level. Those kids are getting recruited, they're having success, but they want to compete in a different type of environment. They want to create structure. They want more competitive academic delivery. And naturally, they want to improve their looks, right? By being part of something that is higher profile, maybe than where they are.
Yeah, and there's a preparation for college, right? Maybe they had
Yeah.
scholarships before they played for you, but they've never been in a strength and conditioning program. They've never been in, academic advisory programs. Their high school, wherever their local high school didn't offer them
Right.
all the elements that make some of the transition. That's what I always say to families when they ask me, they're like, well, why would you send your kid away and all that? And I said, it's maybe not for everyone, but there is an advantage to your son or daughter having access
That's
to
right.
college level practices, whether it's academic, whether it's supports, or whether it's, the other versions of not just necessarily playing soccer, but what does college soccer summer program look like? What does the weight room look like? Have you ever been in a weight program? Like, there's so many advantages to the academy style, to like what you're describing, that I think people often, they just think there's two components. There's playing your sport and there's going to school, when in reality, there's a lot of other pieces that prepare you for that college life. So I think that's a good point that you bring up.
That's the difference maker, Greg,
Yep.
quite frankly. I think there's schools out there delivering competitive academics and experience like we do. Although I put our curriculum up against a lot of these boarding schools because it's way more, diverse. There are places doing the sport. But the difference maker for us is something we call athletic and personal development. And this is a program where you get all the non-sport specific skill delivery from
Exactly.
strength and conditioning, movement. We have people with more diplomas on the wall than I've ever seen delivering mental conditioning, mindset conditioning, leadership training, media training, life skills, like all these things that really round out the experience. Like when I say holistic development, I'm not screwing around. Like this is something that is about more than just school and sport. That is required and mandatory programming as part of the delivery. And the cool thing about it was, like, even when you played in college, you're much younger than me, is like we had sports psychologists kind of milling around, but they weren't there full time.
Right.
The mental conditioning coaches are on the fields and on the courts with student athletes. And what happens is, in the moment something breaks down, they coach the moment. Right. So it's not about like, hey, I looked at your film at practice and here's what happened. Let's work. When it happens in the moment, that's when the delivery takes place. And it's game changing. Like even to me, when I first got here, I went out and witnessed it and I was like, wow.
Yeah, no
Like, can you
different than
imagine that?
no different than your basketball coach. If you had a bad shot or you ran the offense wrong, they would coach the moment. They would coach the mistake right then and there in the moment when it's the most fresh. So the idea that it's taken this long for the mental coaching component to catch up to the physical coaching component is interesting. But I'm
It's
fascinated.
crazy in a way.
It
Like
really
what
is.
took so long, and for you that played at the highest level, the mental component is arguably as, if not more important than anything else, that it be consistent. It's consistently delivered. What's great, what we love is colleges and universities. I'll leave the names out because there's some big ones. Call us and say, can we come in and see what you're doing? Like we love that. That's the ultimate flattery that
Of course.
because some kids will go to these places and these schools will say, we've actually never had kids come here that are more prepared for the experience. And you mentioned the college component. College placement is something that we're bringing out of the shadows as a public conversation because we're really good at it. And a third of the kids that graduated here over the last couple of years, like people think, oh, they go to Alabama and they go to Duke, they go to Kentucky. We have those kids, but a third go to high academic Division threes or Ivy League schools. You're talking about big numbers.
Interesting. Yeah.
So college placement is something we do really, really well, and we've doubled down on it. You probably know this. There are companies out there that are delivering recruiting experiences for student athletes in sports. So we acquired a company a year ago called NCSA, Next College Student Athlete. And essentially what it is, the easiest way to describe it is it's like LinkedIn for high school student athletes that want to compete in sports in college. And you have an advisor who's like a former coach or college admissions director or whatever it is. And they will get to know you. They'll help develop your materials. They'll connect you with the right schools based on your profile, and they help you get recruited. We have plugged this in to our existing college placement to supercharge what we do for student athletes. Because if you're a parent, like I'll tell you what parents worry about here, like they don't ask so much about the sport in the school. Like they know they're getting delivered at an elite level. What happens if my kid gets hurt? What happens if they get sick? Are they safe? And where are they going to college? Like, these are the things parents are concerned with when they send their kids here. And the first three, like, it's a daily 24/7 operation to deliver it. But college placement is hugely important. And we are having great success. Like, everybody is matriculating out of this place.
Yeah, and it goes hand in hand with the next part I want to talk to you about, which I find to be super interesting, and you just kind of alluded to it. So, of course, you have your elite teams, your football team that we see play on TV, and your baseball team, and soccer and whatnot. But you also have, all right. So, say my kid he's not good enough to play on your elite baseball team, but he's a good high school player. We want to give him this. He has an opportunity to go play in college. He's not going to be drafted, but he can go play college baseball or basketball, soccer, whatever it is. You have other teams that it's not just the best 15 high school baseball players and then you let everybody else out, right? So tell parents, if you have a son or daughter who wants to go play at this competitive level, but your concern is they're not at the quote unquote elite of the elite, like, what services are you providing that those kids can also come and thrive in the IMG structure?
It's a great question. And I think we're now getting to the core of what this place really is, which is, 90% of the student athletes here are not on those national teams. And, back to parents and expectations, we know that, like, I know it was like that with my kids, is you look at your own kids a little bit differently, but we've got a spot in sports like that for essentially any level. And the goal we have is, like, how do you place student athletes at a level where they will be challenged and it will be hard, but it will give them an opportunity for improvement. And what we see is a lot of student athletes will start on, like, baseball, Greg, is our fastest growing sport here.
Yeah, so tell us about that. How many teams are you have? Like, just use that as an example.
14.
Wow.
Yeah. 14 baseball teams. And I think
how do you vary who's on what team? Do you try to, like, I think that's incredible.
It's a hard process. My hat's off to, like, our director, Dan Simons, who runs the baseball program. He's a former college coach. I mean, this guy does an incredible job. Baseball was one of those enigma sports at the academy. And over the last 5 years, we've doubled the number of participants. I think in the last 2 years, we've had double-digit draft picks in the MLB draft. This year, we had our highest draft pick
Elijah
ever
Green.
Elijah, right?
No, he's in Miami. He's committed to Miami.
Right.
I don't think he's going to make it, but he's going to probably.
Yeah, I don't know. Either way, he's going to win, right?
I always still claim that he's going to Miami. Sorry, but go ahead.
Sorry. You should, because that's what it's the decision he made. Baseball's kind of strange in that
it's super strange.
These guys commit and they never go.
I know, it's so strange.
But 14 teams, right? So what we do is part of the process is you have to assess the ability of a lot of these kids, and then you have to place them. And what I would say to you, just full transparency, is I don't think 100% of the parents will ever agree with where their kids are placed. But when they see the development over time, not only in the sport, but what you hinted at is, like, if you send your son here and he gets placed on the 4th or 5th team and he's not on the national team in baseball, he gets the same programming and the same delivery and the same everything as kids on the national team.
That was going to be my question. Like, if wherever you fall in that spectrum, are you getting the same access to training, nutrition, coaching?
Everything.
Yeah,
you're getting the same experience. Doesn't matter who you are or what your level is, because the philosophy here at IMG Academy, in the school, on the field, in athletic and personal development around all the life skills, is our role is to plug all that in at the same level and deliver a great experience for everyone, because we know it's going to give everybody the ability to elevate. Like, maybe, national team kids can't elevate. That's not true. Of course they can elevate.
Of course,
they can improve in a variety of different ways, but especially holistically. Like, the thing we actually hear the most from parents is, when my son or daughter came home, they were a different person. Like, they looked me in the eye, they asked questions, they folded the laundry, they took out the garbage, they interacted with people differently. Like, sport and school are important. I don't know about you. I say this to people all the time. College football was the hardest thing I ever did. It changed me as a person. I think if I didn't have that experience, I would be a very different person. This is changing who kids are. And it's really about the development of the entire individual. When we see parents, they're like, I barely recognized this kid when they came back after 2 years. That's the goal. It's more of that, because we know they're going to play in college. We know they're going to succeed academically. We know they came here with the ability to go to Amherst or Williams and they ended up at Harvard. We know all that stuff. But when they go out of here and they're more developed and more mature and more, delivering it as a person, that's the goal. Like, that's really what we are trying to do here. Changing that narrative publicly has been hard because people are like, IMG Sports. We're out to change that narrative because that's actually not what it is.
But I think it's so true. We say it all the time, in our conversations, here with you, you think, and I talk a lot about the teams that I coach, with my kids. And again, they're young, 5th, 4th grade type, 10 and 11-year-old teams. But we always say, and we say this to our parents, I've said it on the show, 90% of what we're doing at practice in the games has nothing to do with the sport.
Nope.
Right? The sport is just secondary. It's just, yes, we're going to teach them to field, shoot, throw, catch, whatever the specific skill is. But it's, can you follow directions? Can you be held accountable? How do you deal with failure? How do you deal with feedback? How do you interact with coaching? How do you deal with playtime, disputes? And so much of that is often tied into the parents, right? That the parents,
Sure,
to me, in the youth sports experience is the trickiest part. Typically, the kids are not the problem. Typically, a lot of the problems are with the adults. And I'd be curious to know what your interaction at IMG is with the families, right? I'm paying a good amount of money to send my son or daughter, and you place them on the 9th team, and I think they're on the 3rd team, and they're not playing as much. Or like, what is the interaction and the line of communication with the parents, right? Because to me, that drives this entire ship is dealing with adults, and dealing with adults sometimes having a misconception of where their child fits on the on the scale here. So like, how do you guys? I'm assuming you have a line of communication with these parents,
sure.
but like, how do you also keep those barriers? We say, we'll deal with your child, especially the high school kids, but like, we got to keep some sort of buffer here that you're not calling me every 5 seconds. Why my kid's not able to do, this or that.
You nailed it. I mean, managing expectations for parents in general it's a full-time job, and it's challenging. And I want to say this too very clearly. There are a lot of parents of students at IMG Academy that come in with the right expectations, or maybe their expectations are here and this is the assessment, but they're willing to listen and everybody comes to the middle and you can figure it out. The interaction takes place in a lot of ways. In my role running this business on a day-to-day basis, we have a head of school. A lot of parents will reach out to the head of school when it comes to, academics or concerns. As you can imagine, even like in college or in high school, parents will reach out to the coaches or the sport director directly, the people they interacted with when they made the decision to come to IMG Academy. I dedicate time every single week to talk to parents directly myself, because like, my job is to try to figure out how we move the experience forward in a positive way. Like, we can't just count on the fact that we do everything really well. We can improve. And I listen to families and parents and customers, families of campers, pro teams that come in. Like, everybody, I've pushed the whole management team here to be accessible to the customer. But the most important thing about the parent interaction is you just have to listen to what they have to say. I think in most cases, parents that have concerns will ratchet up their frustration if they don't feel like there is a voice or an ear on the other end to be able to have the conversation. So we've done that constantly across the campus. What I've said to everybody is 1,000 people working here is everybody touches the customer. And when you touch the customer, like on game day, you're the CEO. If a customer comes to you with a concern, you are empowered to solve that. Start by listening and then figure out a way to solve it. So it's challenging. What you're doing, coaching your kids
is
and
brutal.
The guys you surround you, that it's brutal, but it's the right approach because, I ran youth football in my town in Oakland for 10 years. I went down to the first practice when my oldest was 6 years old, playing flag football. I saw all these dads around. I saw the mayor a couple of days later and I said, you got to get rid of some of these guys. Like, all they talk about is winning. He's like, all right, big shot, you take it. So I put myself in there, took it over, surrounded kids with better people. And I said, here's the goal. We want them to work hard, to learn the game, to have fun, and to come back next year. I said, and all the stuff we talk about is not just going to be about sport. Like, we're going to talk about respect and where you sit in class and how you deal with your teacher and what you do with mom and dad and doing the maximum. And kids came back every single year. But most people don't have the guts to do that in youth sports because the parents, they worry about the winning. Like 10 years of that, Greg, I never had a problem with the kid. And I actually banned half a dozen parents from the facility. Like, the number of parent problems I had, I lost count of them.
It's so true.
There's no joke. It's crazy.
I get it. It's hard. And you nailed it. Expectations and everyone having a clear, we talk a lot here about communication. We talk,
Sure.
we do a lot of stuff for like best practices of youth coaching. And so much of it is, it's the coach's job to set expectations, yes, to the kids, to the players, but also more importantly, to the parents. Here's how we're going to run things. Here's why we are going to do things this way. Here's how your son or daughter is going to be evaluated. And this is what the factors are going to be to implement what position they play or how much time and what. Here's everything. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask us, but this is how we're approaching it. This is why we believe it. If you don't like our approach, go play for a different team. Like no one's forcing you to do it, but like we believe in, not everyone likes the way we run it. We're not for everybody, but we are very clear with our expectations of what we expect from the kids, what we expect from the parents. We expect you to be on time. We expect you to let us coach your kid. So, I mean, we see that at this small level. So I can only imagine what that machine looks like to have 1,400 student athletes at various ages. So I can only imagine what that line of communication and what that entails, because I think it must be, it has to be a feat in and of itself.
It is, and my hat's off. The thing about IMG Academy that is remarkable is you can't turn the place off. Like, it's not like you work 9 to 5 and then you have the weekend off. It doesn't exist. People here are remarkable. Like, they care so much about our purpose, which is like to empower student athletes to win the future. Like, they care so much about it. They pour themselves into it. The relationships that they have, like, it's a hard job. So that communication is a feat in itself. And I think everybody's assumption is like, youth sports, it's terrible. High school, it's bad. College is like, if kids are good enough, they never hear. When I worked at Rutgers, I had a parent of a girls soccer player who worked in Italy fly to New Jersey to talk to me about the kids' playing time. It doesn't end in college. Like, parents are still doubling down on playing time. But you probably know this from what you're doing. You have to set some boundaries. You talk to parents and say, here's what we're out to do. Here's how we're going to do it. You're not going to agree with everything we do. If you don't, you're welcome to talk to us, never at a practice or a game. And we just encourage you to wait 24 hours. If you feel the same way in 24 hours, come talk to us.
Totally. That's we have that exact rule.
Yeah, that's what you do. You'll love this because you're from my neck of the woods. I used to coach as well as run the program, and I'd always keep an extra whistle in my pocket. And the minute a parent ran their mouth, I would throw the whistle at them and say, we could use help. And then I would never hear from them again.
Of course.
They don't want to really be invested in it.
I love passive aggressive.
They want to tell you what to do.
Oh, I love passive aggressive, subtle jabs.
It's because you're from my neck of the woods. That's why you like it. Right?
Yeah, I always say, listen, if you want to sacrifice your time and energy and effort and come coach the team, you can do it. Because I promise you, once you step off the sideline and you're in the fire and everything's on you and you got 20 kids looking at you and they're looking sideways, they have no idea what you're talking about. Now you come out here and do it and tell me how easy it is. But before I let you go, and again, Tim, you've been so generous with your time. I could ask you, I'm fascinated by this whole thing. I want to bring my kids down to a summer camp one of these years because I think they'd have a blast. I know. I got the guy. Call when you're ready. I've got a guy. All right. So say my daughter comes and she enrolls. She's a 9th grader and she's going to play on your girls' soccer team. Just give our viewers an idea of what does the life look like. We know she's going to practice and weight train and all that, but like, give us an idea of you mentioned the holistic approach to the experience of these young kids. Like, what would her typical day look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's highly structured. Like, it's not a typical high school day anywhere else, but basically this is how it works. We have to run the school twice a day. And people are like, well, what exactly does that mean? We have 1,400 kids. So some will go to school in the morning and they'll do sport in the afternoon. Some will do sport in the morning and they'll do school in the afternoon. And obviously they're doing breakfast, they're doing lunch, they got homework, they have strength training some days, they have mental conditioning some days, they have nutrition meetings some days. There's a variety of different things. They have to do treatment and training and get iced and do the cold tub. Like, it's that life. But what I would say is, like, I don't want to paint the wrong picture, is that letting them be kids is a hugely important part of what we do. We built a student athlete recreational complex with outdoor basketball courts and soccer fields and a smoothie bar and a pool that's like on Sundays when kids have nothing, it's like a Vegas pool club, like big screens, loud music, food. Everybody's in the pool hanging out and relaxing. We do trips to the beach. Kids go to the mall. Kids go to Disney. Kids go to Busch Gardens. Like, we're doing excursion, fishing trips, golf. Like, there is an element of this where we want kids to be kids. There's pep rallies. Okay. Because we're part of a bigger company that represents a lot of celebrities, we launched something last year during COVID. We were talking to kids about mental health. And
Yep.
they said it would be great to hear from other people about how they manage certain things. Like, I'm interested in financial literacy. I'm interested in overcoming adversity. We created a thing called the IMG Academy Impact Series, where we had WME and Endeavor clients come to the school and do assemblies with kids. And Sabrina Ionescu talked about name, image, and likeness and how she missed it by a year, but why it's really a distraction. And she was happy to miss it by a year. It kept her on her plan. Scottie Pippen Jr. and Sr. did one together, talked about their experiences. And then we are now planning other clients to do this. But in a lot of ways, it is like a high school. Like, we get people in this basketball facility and we do assemblies. There was a pep rally at the beginning of school. There's the kickoff week. The coaches line up the first day of school and clap kids in. Like, it's a real community here.
That's cool.
But trust me, kids get to have fun because we know that the balance of actually being a kid, like, yeah, we're big on nutrition, but we've got a place that does pizza all the time because kids like pizza. Like, you can't deny kids the experience of being kids, but it's highly structured. Like, your daughter might go to school and then have lunch and then do sport. And then on the weekend, she'll have excursions, but she's got mental conditioning and then the cold tub and then homework. And then I got dinner and then I got film. Like, in a lot of ways, it's like you and I experienced when we played in college. Like, that's the life.
Yeah, it sounds very much like that. And again, I'm going to ask you a question that I'm sure you field all the time. But again, I think it's important. You mentioned that a lot of what you guys are doing is trying to change narratives and optics that you don't necessarily think that publicly align with what you guys are doing in-house. So, I've heard people say to me, your kids are going to go off to college. They're going to go off. So why rush it? Like, why send them there 2 years early, 3 years early, 1 year, whatever it is? So hearing you say, like, it seems like you guys really make a conscious effort to try to make this no different than if they were back at their, public or private school back home. But, like, in your words, like, why is it okay to send my son or daughter away to a college, quote unquote, college type experience as a 10th grader or an 11th grader?
I think it's a decision that you make as a family based on one thing. And we know the difference between student athletes that succeed at a high level and those that have success, or maybe they decide they're not going to play, whatever. What's the difference? They're willing to do the maximum, not the minimum. They're willing to sacrifice some of the things in their lives that other kids may be able to do. Like, my younger son, who's playing basketball at Gettysburg, he sacrificed a lot in his high school career because he wanted to play college basketball at some level. And I used to say, like, I'd see his friends out doing this, that, and the other thing, and he sacrificed. I think that's the difference. Family has to make a decision. Like, why am I going to do this? Because we're going to double down and do more than everyone else to distinguish ourselves. And by the way, COVID screwed up recruiting completely, and it's going to take 5 years to recover. This transfer portal nonsense means less spots for kids. It's harder than ever to get recruited. And I think the decision also shines a brighter light on certain student athletes based on the fact that the brand has power. It's known in all the 8 sports that we deliver, and it does create more looks along the way, and also gives you the ability to supercharge your development, your improvement on a variety of fronts, mainly as sort of the whole individual. But it is a case by case, decision. What I'd say too, Greg, is, like, we talked about price. When I came here, I said, you have an addressable market in youth sports of billions of kids. It's 1,400 kids here. And when we talked about doing another IMG Academy somewhere else, which we're not doing, when we talked about it, somebody in a meeting said something about watering down Florida. And I was like, there's billions of kids in the environment. Are you watering it down with 1,400 kids? You're going to have one somewhere else. But the strategy going forward from the NCSA acquisition, we are in development on something called IMG Academy Plus, which is, during COVID, we developed a virtual camp product. We put it in beta. People bought it. We trained them virtually. It was kind of fun. IMG Academy Plus is virtual mental conditioning, virtual nutrition training, virtual mindset. We are piloting this because we know there's an audience out there that would love to be associated with or have an experience with IMG Academy as a brand, but at a different price point, or they can do it from a distance. They could pay less. They could still be associated. They could get the expertise. We're now taking the expertise we have outside the walls. And that's not something that's been done. It took COVID to open our eyes to all the possibilities there. But that's really where I think a great opportunity is for us.
And I think these resources are all so valuable for our listeners, right? Our viewers, the people who listen to our show on a week by week, and we hear from them, they submit questions. Like, these are the things they're asking us. Like, what can we do to help our son or daughter make the 6th grade team, make their middle school team, make their high school team? And then, of course, there's the handful that are saying, hey, my son or daughter has aspirations beyond to go to college. But these tools and resources are just so valuable. And that might have been the answer to my last question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And maybe if it is, then great. If not, maybe there's something else. Like, what is the future of IMG? Like, where do you see it going? What's the next path for you guys to just continue to expand this opportunity and these resources that you guys are able to provide these young kids?
I'll answer it in one sentence. I think the future because when people say IMG Academy, they think of the physical destination in Florida. I'm sure that's the first thing you thought of, right? Because you've been here and you've experienced it, although it's like a different place from when you were here.
Yep.
The goal, where we're going in the future, wherever we are physically is, IMG Academy is not just a destination. IMG Academy is an experience, right? That can be delivered in a variety of different ways. It can be delivered in a camp. It can be delivered in person as part of a boarding school experience. It can be delivered virtually. If, hey, I'm in a great program, I'm competing at a high level, I'm battling with the mental part of it, I'm going to sign up for IMG Academy Plus mental conditioning, and I'm going to have my training every week from one of their experts there, right? So the narrative is two things. Number one is this is a place for holistic development of young people, and it's not just a destination anymore. Like, that's where we're headed. The battle is they hear this: 2 NFL draft picks, 5 Major League Baseball draft picks, 4 McDonald's All-Americans this year, which is more than any high school in the country has ever had. And we ride that because it creates great marketing visibility for who we are. But where we're going is IMG Academy is an experience. It's not just a destination.
I think that's awesome. I hope this is an ongoing conversation. I hope we can check back in with you over time, Tim, because I find
so.
There's so
Can
much
we do
more.
a live show from IMG Academy? Like, let's get you guys down here and do a show from here. Let's do it.
We just booked it. We're coming down. Right. I just think there's so many more. I mean, I have just so many other things that I want to be able to dive into. I think it'd be great for our viewers to be able to see the facility and be in person and be down there and show them the academic facilities and show them the dorms and show them where the kids eat and sleep and play. They know weight rooms are cool. They know the practice facilities are. Yes, I think there's a bigger conversation here. And again, Tim, I can't thank you enough for joining us here. I think these resources and these tools that we can continue to kind of open these doors and eyes to our viewers is the whole purpose of what we're doing here at You Think. So I can't thank you enough. Good luck to Ramapo. I hope we beat you. Remember what's on the line.
Everybody hear that? He just said good luck to the big rival.
Well, because I wanted to be nice, because if Wayne Hills wins, I'm sending all 3 of my kids there for free. That's on the record.
Listen, there's a lot on the line here.
Just kidding.
I'm going to stop short of wishing Wayne Hills luck. I just
Fair
don't
enough.
know if that's something
Where's
I
the
can
game?
stomach.
Is it in Ramapo or is it Wayne Hills?
I believe it's at Ramapo this year.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Not a place that you have great memories of.
I'm not sure if I've ever won there.
Well,
we would win a lot at home. We won a lot at home.
You did. You beat them. I remember being there at the state championship game when you beat them in Wayne on that muddy, rainy day.
We were supposed to play at Rutgers, and we got a horrible snowstorm, and they couldn't plow the field off. So they moved the game to a Sunday. They canceled it on Saturday. They moved it to Sunday, and we were the higher seed, so we got to host it, and it was a mess. It was a mess. It was a grass field at the time.
Tight ends are the best athletes on the field. We all know that, and we always figure out a way to adjust to the elements there.
Of course, because that's what we do. But no, Tim, you can count on it. We're coming down there. You think we are going to come down there? We are going to come visit with you guys.
We have a broadcast center here too, by the way. I forgot to mention, we built it out during COVID in our school.
That's
cool. Ready for you. All you got to do is bring your handsome face, and we'll plug in and we'll just go.
Well, I have that.
You do.
All right. Well, hey, Tim Pernetti, thank you so much, Tim, for just allowing us to have this conversation. Thank you for joining us on You Think on behalf of IMG, and you can count on it. We're coming down, and this conversation is not over.
Love it, man. Thanks for having me. It's always great to see you.
All right. Thanks so much. Tim Pernetti of IMG Academy. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed our latest episode with IMG Chief Operating Officer Tim Pernetti. Listen, the landscape of youth sports is changing. People are taking a much more professionalized approach. We've covered that now countless times here on You Think. And, IMG is at the top of that. They don't shy away from the services and the experience that they believe they're offering. But I really enjoyed the part that I took away was how much they really do value and cherish like the overall student athlete experience. Everyone thinks it's just about the sport. And to hear him talking about how they balance the athletics, how they balance academics, and then how they balance the personal, social side, I thought was really eye-opening for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. It might not be for everybody, but it's out there and it's gaining steam. And I think it's just an interesting world to explore. So thanks again to Tim Pernetti from IMG Academy for joining us here on You Think. And at this time, as always, I'm going to be bringing in my producer, Tasha. Tasha, we got some good ones today or what?
Okay, so this is from Davis from Instagram. He says he's seeing a lot of young athletes who are getting famous online and becoming jerks. So how would you advise athletes with large followings?
It's hard. I mean, this is something that we talked with Josiah Johnson a couple weeks ago. We had him on and he kind of gave us the lay of the land and how social media is being used for good and for bad. And this is always going to be one of the, unintended consequences is we're going to create, pseudo celebrities at a young age. And listen, it's hard for adults to be some, celebrities, be well known, be followed, have that pressure of putting out this certain image or the pressure of having a lot of eyeballs on them. And let alone now we're asking young kids, as young as high school and then oftentimes even younger. So, I think it's a challenge. I think it falls a lot on the parents. I think it falls a lot on the parents, monitoring and understanding what's going on the social media channels. How is it being used? For all the good that you think is coming out of it, being aware that there are going to be some unforeseen negatives that are going to come as a result. So I think a lot of it falls on the parents. I think if the kid is using it and not using it for the right manner, it's got to be limited. It's got to be restricted in some capacity, by the adults in their life. So listen, the code of social media has yet to be cracked. I go through it with my own kids. They're on TikTok and the videos they see and watch. And, we constantly are monitoring that and making sure that what they're being exposed to and how they're portraying themselves is in a positive light and a light that, they're not going to look back on and regret. So it's a challenge. Anytime someone gets early fame, early notoriety, we've seen it throughout, time. It's a delicate balance. There's a lot of good that comes with it, but unfortunately there's a lot of bad.
Yeah. Well, our second fan question is also from Instagram. It's from Chris. He says, I can't keep up with the NCAA transfer rules, and it seems like it's hurting the student athletes the most. So what do you think will make it better?
I think that's what everybody's trying to figure out, as we speak. I think, the combination of the NIL stuff and the transfer portal just makes a truly open system. It makes a system where you really can just every year enter into the portal and go to the highest bidder. And I don't think that's necessarily what everybody had in mind when they fought hard to have student athletes be able to be compensated and paid. I think in its own little sphere, I think that was a positive. But now all of a sudden the unlimited transfer portals and not having to sit out, in conjunction with the ability to go out and seek the highest dollar and seek the highest bidder, I think has just created a market in which are we losing the integrity? Are we losing what the student athlete college experience should be? I think either one of those two situations by themselves, I'd be supportive of. I think the idea that if a coach leaves or if you're not playing or you fall behind the depth chart, that you have to stick it out at that school and not go seek another opportunity to further your career, further your education. I think to limit kids from those options is tough. That was the rules when I transferred from Notre Dame to Miami. I had to sit out an entire year. That's no longer the case. So I like that they changed that rule. I want kids to be able to go and play and have success and be in a situation that they're comfortable in. I also could live with the idea of student athletes being compensated, these TV deals, these merch deals. I mean, there's a lot of money being made off their backs. I think the problem lies that there's both things simultaneously in existence, which now kind of breaks what the original thought of both rules now when they're used together, I think kind of deviates off its original path. So keeping up with the rules, I'm sure they're going to change again. I'm sure they're going to change countless times as the landscape of college sports continues to evolve. So it's something that we'll monitor. It's something that we'll continue to learn to navigate as time goes on. But, I'm with him. I think it's a challenging landscape right now to keep track of.
Do you think it hurts the student athlete, or do you think the transfer portal favors student athletes?
I think like anything, I think some kids are really benefiting. I think
Mhm.
they're benefiting, because they're able to transfer and further their athletic career. They're getting new opportunities to play, whether it's a kid who leaves a small school and is able to move up the ranks, or a kid who's kind of buried on the depth chart at a big school, being able to drop down maybe a level of school and be able to play and contribute and start, or whatever it is. So I think as anything, there's pros. I think there's a lot of kids who've gotten opportunities through this to earn money, to make a living, to help support their family, have a better life. Make money that is being made off their back and getting a cut of it. So I think there's all those positives. And then I think, like anything, there's a bunch of negatives. There's a bunch of high school kids that are not getting scholarships that 5 years ago would have been getting scholarships, because those are being earmarked for the transfer portal. So now all of a sudden, instead of being able to be the 20th scholarship and be a kid who they're taking a chance on at a high school, you're not getting that scholarship anymore to, school X. You're now going to have to drop down a level to get opportunities to play, because they're going to wait for somebody to enter the portal who's a little more physical, a little more developed, a little older than you are, and they'd rather take up that roster spot with somebody else. So I think like anything, there's two sides to the coin. It just matters, how does it affect you personally when you're in that moment? I think that's how everybody's judging all of this, and I don't know if that's necessarily great for the entire whole.
All right. Well, our last audience question says, we hear a lot about your dad, Chris, on the podcast, but your mom was also a legend too. She was a PE teacher in Jersey. So what was it like growing up with her?
Yeah, she's the best. It's funny. We back home before my dad won his first state championship, we used to bust his chops because she was a softball coach at the school she coached at. As the question was, she was a PE teacher, phys ed teacher. She was a special ed teacher. Had a couple different roles at her school, Manchester Regional High School back in New Jersey. But before she had my older brother, she was also the varsity softball coach, and she won a state championship as a softball coach before my dad won one as a football coach. So that was always kind of like our running joke to him, that mom was a better coach than he was, but she kind of gave up the coaching once she had my brothers and I. But she was the center. She made it all work, especially my dad was coaching and doing his thing, and she was getting us to and from practice, getting us fed, getting our homework done. She was managing all of that while dad was especially in season. So she made it all go. She's still kind of the rock that makes it all go, and we're very thankful for everything. One day we're going to have her on, maybe for a Mother's Day episode. We'll have her on, because she raised 3 boys that all went through it in 3 different capacities. She lived as a wife of a football coach for 40 years. So she has a lot of really good stories, and she has a lot of good nights and a lot of bad nights as a result to both youth sports and high school sports. So it's I'm sure she'd have I think people would enjoy a conversation with her. We're going to have her on one of these days.
Seems like coaching just runs in the Olsen blood.
Oh, it's exhausting. I don't recommend it.
Oh, gosh. Well, that's all we have for fan questions today. You could submit them at Youth Inc. or at Greg Olsen on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter.
We got it. Thanks so much, Tasha. Appreciate you joining as always. And thank you guys all so much for following us here on Youth Inc. Please continue to rate, review, subscribe wherever you guys get your pods. And we look forward to seeing what we have in store for you guys next week. Take care.